Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Titusville City Council meeting of April 25th, 2017 at 5:30. We have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is an invocation. I don't see any ministers, so we'll have a moment of silence, please. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is special recognitions and presentations. Mr. City Manager, would you like to introduce these?
Yes, sir. We have Mr. Tim Ford and Kubana Ofuso. We call him KB. From the Development Services Department as Employees of the Month. And I believe Ms. Bisaka is going to come to the podium and tell you why.
It's my pleasure to tell you why these two gentlemen have been nominated and received the Employee of the Month. It was for their wayfinding program, which you may have noticed as you've driven around downtown. Tim and KB worked tirelessly to understand both the Florida Department of Transportation and the city regulations and coordinated a team of city staff to consider the input in developing this program. A wayfinding program has to meet numerous technical and engineering requirements while reflecting the character and specific needs of the local community. KB and Tim visited several cities in Central Florida to investigate their wayfinding programs before beginning the task of developing a coordinated plan for Titusville. Based on the numerous and often tedious rules of the state, they developed a plan, worked with purchasing to go through the procurement process, and spent many hours in the field determining appropriate locations for the signs. Tim and KB also ensured the signs were in place for the 150th anniversary celebration kickoff held in January. All of this was accomplished at a savings of approximately $100,000 to the city. That is what other cities have spent to get that kind of a program. And their next step is, as soon as the Department of Transportation is done reviewing there, then we will see those wayfinding signs along the state roads as well as the city roads. So please join me in congratulating Tim and KB.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
KB, congratulations. Thank both of you for all the great work you've done.
So we'll need to turn around, and I'm going to be looking.
Here we go. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Great job.
Next item is the Tifa LLC 2016 audit. Mr. City Manager.
Tifa LLC is a company formed by the City of Titusville and Farmington Water Resources LLC to supply water resources. In accordance with Article 5, Section 521 of the Tifa LLC operating agreement, the audit of financial statement was performed for the years ending December 31, 2016 and 15. The firm of Moore, Stevens & Lovelace, PA, certified public accountants, conducted the audit. Moore Stevens Lovelace conducted the 2016 Tifa LLC audit in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. At the March 23, 2017 meeting, the Tifa LLC Management Committee accepted the 2016 audit. Mr. Farland, Hellican, CPA with Moore Stevens and Lovelace, will present the audit and respond to council's questions. Sir?
Thank you. Good evening. It's Farland Halleckman.
Halleckman,
For the
thank
record.
you, sir.
Yeah. And, well, the financial statements have been issued, and our audit report was a clean report. It was actually a rather uneventful audit. TIFA, as you know, has been a capital-intensive project, and for years now, you've been spending a lot of money to put in the infrastructure for both phases of the well field. And by the beginning of 2016, that construction had kind of been completed and was starting to slow down. You had spent a lot of money on the construction. Now it's time to start reaping the rewards from all of that. And as you can see, there was actually you had $1.3 million of sales of water for the year. You were able to return $1,340,000 to the partners. Yourself and Farmington split that, and so it's nice to see a return of capital, since it's been for years and years just putting capital into it. There's a number of things that I'm required to tell you as in connection with the audit, and I'll just go through those quickly. With regard to the qualitative aspects of the financial accounting practices of TIFA, there were no transactions that we noted that for which there's a lack of any authoritative guidance on how to account for this or that. It was all pretty straightforward. There were some estimates in the financial statements. The largest estimate has to do with the largest expense, which is depreciation expense. If you remember, I started off by saying it's very capital intensive. You'd put a lot of money into the ground in these wells, and that has each well has a useful life. And so we review management's estimates of those useful lives and compare them to best practices for municipalities, and as well as the engineering reports and everything that comes to our attention, and we believe that those estimates are fair and reasonable. We've studied the systems of internal control as well as part of the audit, not just to verify the numbers, but to take a look at the systems that generate those numbers. And we run some tests of transactions through those systems, and we noted no deficiencies in internal control, and certainly no material weaknesses in internal control. A material weakness would be a situation where there could be an error or a problem that would be a material problem. So we didn't identify anything there, and there were no difficulties in performing the audit, except for riding in the pickup truck through the well field and looking at all of the meters. You have a great procedure that has to do with internal controls. Is on December 31st, your staff, the staff from Farmington, and the management company all get in their trucks and ride from meter to meter, and everybody reads them and countersigns saying, yes, we all agree that this was the reading on the meter. Well, guess what? The auditors ride with them, and so you have 4 different sets of eyes verifying the numbers in terms of water that's been pumped during the year. There were no disagreements with management, and I think that concludes my presentation.
Very good, thank you. I like audits that are profitable and uneventful, so that's great.
Profitable and uneventful, yeah.
As long as they stay that way, we're going to get along fine.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions? I see none. I thank you very much for your presentation, sir, and we need a motion to accept the fiscal year 2016 audit of TIFA LLC.
I will make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next item is Clean Green Belt presentation.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge the Greenbelt certification for Lean Project Building Permit Process Improvements. Mr. Don Johnson of CAS Adaptive Solutions will present a Greenbelt certification to Mr. Steve Adams of the Community Development for completion of his certification requirements. I believe Mr. Adams has a short presentation on his project.
Hello, Council. So, like Mr. Larice indicated, I'm Steve Adams, Deputy Building Official with the Building Department under the Community Development Division. And I chose to do my project on permit management improvement. So what we started with was a process that had evolved over time and passed along from employee and employee administration on down. It was mostly tribal and traditional in nature, and there was really no formal policy or standard operating procedure, no documentation of what steps you should take in order to turn an application into a permit. So I chose to galvanize that actual process. And then along doing that, I found quite a few quick wins, some things that we had been doing for decades that we didn't need to do. There was a lot of requirements that we were holding applicants to that were completely archaic and unnecessary. So it was a lot of fun finding stuff like that when we could contact somebody and say, hey, guess what? You don't need to do that anymore. Turns out it's not a requirement. But ultimately my goal was, of course, the slide demonstration will show you some of our goals. But the biggest goal that I really had was to improve not only the turnover time, because that would seem to be an issue. Oh, it's me. I'm operating this. Okay. What do you get paid for? Okay. So do I point this at you, or where do I? Some of my members, there were some staff members along with myself. Lori Ott is our senior development technician, Karen Dormant, development tech. And we also had one of our team members, Rochelle Jolly, who is a frequent visitor to our department. She's actually with a contracting permit agency. So she visits our counter along with other municipalities. So she really had a lot of input as to comparing us to others. So she was a valuable team member. So again, the permit management system, it's never been formalized. That was one of my main goals. The input, route, review, approval, issuance, always tribal and traditional. Some of us think that's interesting. It can be inconsistent and time-consuming, and the lack of the process was, frankly, it was frustrating for our staff members, especially when you were trying to train a new staff member and you had nothing to give them just to tell them how to do their job. So there's my goal was to improve and define the process. So step one, application submittal. It's exactly what it sounds like. Whenever an applicant approaches the counter, they submit an application. 2, that application has to go through a review, and it has to go through several members, depending on the scope of work. And then 3, ultimately, is we slide a permit across the counter. So in the application submittal, there's different kinds of scopes of work. There's new construction. There's existing buildings. We're going to make an alteration, just a simple repair. There's many, many scopes of work. Signs, accessory structures, fences. So what is required for those? Again, there was never really any kind of documentation demonstrating what I expect upon any of those applications. Oftentimes, one of the biggest questions we always had was, how much is this permit going to cost me? And the answer was always, well, I got to put it into the computer and then I can give you an answer. So we formalized our fee schedule to where now it's predictable and consistent, and we can actually deliver that answer to an applicant at the counter. And then the review route, that was always one of the most frustrating parts of our job, is you have an entry-level employee who takes that application at submittal, and then that employee is somehow responsible to determine what staff members are required to actually look at this because of the scope of work that's written on there. And all of us in the team, we felt that's too much responsibility for that person to make that kind of decision, because there was a lot of things that were kind of getting swept under the rug and a lot of things were getting missed. So in this process, we took advantage of our software program and really broke it down and actually just learned how to use it. So now the software program has been set up, programmed to where it auto-populates all the required review members who, based on the scope of work and based on the application type. So now the staff member who takes that application is no longer required to make those important decisions, but rather just input that scope of work into the system, push it on down the line, then all of a sudden everybody gets an email saying, hey, now you've got a required review. And that is kind of what we talk about here in the second step, the actual review route. So who's responsible? What information is required for that reviewer to conduct that scope of review? Who delivers the comments? That was another frustrating. If you had 3 different reviewers on an application and all 3 of them generated some kind of comment, well, who's the one who delivers the comments? So we formalize that. We actually have a staff member who's responsible to deliver those comments, a central point of contact. When is the review complete? Who's responsible to say, well, has everybody got all their ducks in a row? And where does the application go from there? Once everybody's done, who's responsible to call the guy and say, okay, it's ready, come pick it up. Here's how much money you owe us. So all those are kind of questions that we had, and I'm happy to say that we solved all of them with this process. The third step is actually when you issue the permit, who verifies the permit fees? Again, that was an entry-level staff member at the front counter who had no idea the fee schedule in our ordinance and how it operated. So now it's all predictable and it's all consistent. How are the fees paid? There was a lot of quick wins there. We found out all kinds. We can take payment in a lot of forms. It's fascinating. Let's move on to. There's some examples of the process streams. I don't know how familiar you are with the Lean Six Sigma process, but it was a lot of fun trying to figure out. This is a spaghetti map. It's kind of difficult to see, but you can see those are the offices in our department upstairs. And we tried to demonstrate where an application goes and how it returns back to the counter. And after all the lines started crossing over each other, we finally figured out we got to do something about this. So our flow is a lot cleaner now because, we're utilizing our software program to where most of our reviewers don't even need to see the actual paper application or the paper plans because we're utilizing technology by scanning those documents in. Again, an email pops up, they pull it up and look at it. The swim lane, that right there is a really good graphic demonstration of, you see a real nice clean linear line of how it moves through the process, and then boom, all of a sudden it balloons out into a bunch of reviewers and a roadblock happens, and that's where we found our challenges were in that roadblock. So the process was really amazing and giving us actually the opportunity to break it down so that we could see where things were failing and how we had to improve them. So I want to get to the good part here. Here's the steps that we had taken. We standardized some of those things I've already mentioned, specific staff members. Here's the review route. We actually identified each scope of work and assigned what reviewers are required. Here's the good part. Before the project, a typical single-family house under new construction, the turnaround time for that was 18 business days. That's from application, going through all the reviews, turn it into a permit. 18 business days. After, we're turning that into a permit in 10 business days. And actually, those numbers right there could probably be updated. We were turning around applications last week in 8 business days. Actually calling the applicant saying, your permit's ready, bring us a check. In 8 business days, it made it through all the reviews. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Now, this one here is much more impressive. A new commercial non-residential building, like a new facility. We've had some recent new facilities around town. I'm sure you guys are certainly familiar. 24 business days is typically, on average, from the samples that we took, what it would take from application to submittal. And again, 10 business days is what we're realizing now, making it through the entire. Now, this is not counting the site development. This is a completely different review process. But oftentimes we run our review concurrent with a site development plan. So whenever a new building permit, that's us looking at the sticks and the bricks, we can turn it around in 10 days. Pretty happy with that. Typical roof permit was taking about 4 days to slide a permit. We got it down to 2. A mechanical permit, that's just you wanting to change out your air conditioner. Again, from 4 days to 2 business days. And fence, that's another one that we see a lot of. those are roofs, mechanical changeouts, fences. That's really what we do. Every now and then we get a new house. No, I'm joking. We do a lot of new houses. But 2 business days for a fence, that gives the site, gives us an opportunity to examine the site, make sure that it's consistent with our land development regulations. We're pretty happy with that. So now our intention is to maintain these impressive results. Often we're adding to our policy or standard operating procedure, adding to it anytime somebody finds out, well, this needs to be in the policy. So we're adding to it. It's a living document that we can all work off of and build and grow. Keeping my thumb on the pulse of the review turnover times. I've got kind of a little nugget of enjoyment every day. I go in and kind of look and see, did anything get better? I'm checking on the review turnaround time, so I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. And again, one of the goals was to improve the morale of our staff, and I can't say how much of a difference it's made where our staff is now, excited and they're not frustrated, they're not intimidated, they don't feel like, I've let the applicant down, because honestly that's a big part of our job is delivering news. Well, it's not ready yet, give me another couple days. So that's been a big boost in our morale. And then obviously the most important thing here is customer service and being an effective department and offering that service. So we're pretty happy with the way that's turning out. Any questions?
Any questions? Go right ahead.
Really not a question at all. Just an impressed look that to come out and do this. And a lot of people might think, and I might have thought if you just threw it out there and say, look what we did. But to look at all this, that's called dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and doing the best you can for the citizens of Titusville. We've all heard, and if you're sitting up here, you've certainly heard complaints about, what it takes to get a building permit. Oh, they make it so difficult. They do this, they do that. Well, what I see is they're doing all they can to make it simple and to be user-friendly. So, I'm just sitting here listening, saying, this is just above and beyond. And again, my hat's off to you guys.
Great.
You are doing your best to make it easy for the citizens.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say that everyone on council just feels wonderful when we hear our system is getting more efficient and easier for our customers to work with. So you did a great job, and we certainly appreciate
Sure.
it. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
And I believe Don is going to come up and present after Vice Mayor's done speaking.
Hey, and sir, I appreciate it, not to belabor, but I'll share with you what as my experience in taking information like that to the community, or vice versa, hearing it from the community.
Sure.
Now this is years ago, but from a history, go one further. I remember receiving a statistic relative to one portion of our permitting process that years ago had us at 3.5 touches at 54 days in between touches, which put permitting, I think, almost about 6 months on some projects. So go one further, that recently in years for development and a culture that says, let's get better. We went from years ago to, I think it was 2.5 with 14 days in between, which put us at 28 days. And I got to be honest, I was doing backflips because that is some tremendous progress. And just my credit to your culture, my credit to the culture and staff of that say, let's get better, and now adding process improvement that is beyond just wanting to get better, talking about the ideas, but making it so that it can't go away if you lose somebody. That's amazing. Your results are fantastic. I can't wait to share them with the community, so thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Mr. Johnston, you have a
Yes.
certificate, I believe?
Thank you. Yes, because of all this hard work and the results, we are pleased today to certify Steve Adams as a Greenbelt. Bonnie Stone and myself had the pleasure of training Steve and all his other Greenbelt cohorts. And I will mention that listening to Steve discuss his project as it was evolving, sitting with Mr. Larice and listening to the progression, it was neat to watch the enthusiasm. Steve's kind of a laid-back kind of person. And as he got further and further along, you could tell this intensity building inside him. It was really taking hold to the point it was, I would describe the look in his eye as bordering on maniacal towards the end. So great stuff. You've got a green belt for life here, I believe, and congratulations to you. So I'd like to present this certificate as a green belt. Congratulations. Thank you. All right, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And the next item is employees' letters of appreciation. The city manager.
Yes, sir. For the record, I'd like to read the letters of appreciation received from employees this month. Mr. Steve Adams, Deputy Building Official. Tim Ford, Development Planner. Mandy Lamont, Development Office Manager. Edie McCall, Economic Development Director. Lori Ott, Senior Development Specialist. Brad Parrish, Planning Manager. Gary Stavopoulos, Building Director. Trevor Tupragan, Senior Planner. Preston Yates, Development Technical Manager. And from the Fire Department, Michael Abernathy, Lieutenant. Cody Burge, Firefighter EMT. And Stephen Hartzell, Acting Driver Operator.
Very good, and thank you to all of those people. Next is petitions and requests from the public present. Would anybody like to speak under this item? I see no takers, so we have completed our business, and I will declare this meeting adjourned. The next meeting will start promptly at 6:30.